Then Judiciary is in session. Senator McConkey is going to do the pledge. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, we're going to start off with House Bill 226 relative to use of drug checking equipment. Welcome, Senator Newell. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. I apologize. I'm not wearing my name tag today, but it's Representative Newell. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the committee for your time and attention today. I'm Jody Newell, and I represent the good folks in Cheshire 4 and Keene. Some of you will remember that last term, a similar bill was proposed. We created a subcommittee over in the House, poured over the details, brought in stakeholders and experts, and ultimately passed that bill out of committee and on the consent calendar over to the Senate. Unfortunately, it faced some resistance in the Senate, so what we did, due to the importance of implementing this policy, we decided to take a real good look at the concerns expressed and to adapt. So the resulting bill is what we have here today. It's 2025, and while we have done an extraordinary job building out our system of substance use prevention, treatment, recovery, and harm reduction, we are still losing loved ones to overdose. Too many people have been lost, and too many are still struggling, still at risk. One important element of a comprehensive harm reduction strategy involves the ability to analyze the substances on our streets. In fact, much of the rest of our system depends on a complete, accurate, and dynamic understanding of exactly what's on our streets and where. While we were able to pass fentanyl and xylazine test strip decriminalization last year, this provides very limited information. So I'd like to direct more technical questions to our expert here. But to briefly explain, a test strip identifies the presence of a substance, and only that one substance that test is intended to identify. It does not measure how much of that substance is present or whether any other substances are present. Fortunately, there are other tools for a more deep analysis. This bill would allow for organizations registered with DHHS to use this equipment in order to gain more information about what is on our streets, and with that, help to target assistance where needed, ultimately saving precious lives. I know our time is limited, and I don't want to hold you up any more than I need to, but I have kind of gone through and broken down for something that is essentially just enabling folks to be able to do something. You know, it just seemed like, there's a little bit more meat in this, so I wanted to kind of explain why that is. So I'll just kind of very briefly go through point by point. Page 2, lines 13 through 16. In this section, we are amending in order to draw a clear distinction in what uses and intended purposes drug testing equipment is allowable for and what it is not allowable for. Page 2, lines 17 through 26. This is a little bit of rearranging in order to add additional exemptions. I want you to note that we maintain the language that passed in 2023, decriminalizing fentanyl and xylazine test strips, and the conditions under which that exemption is made now applies to the rest that we're adding. On page 2, lines 30 through 36, this is where we carve out an exemption for drug checking equipment and the necessary materials when used by agents of organizations that are explicitly authorized by the state, county, municipality, or public health department to engage in this work. Page 3, lines 1 through 26. At this point, we needed to add some further definitions, including drug checking equipment, drug packaging, eligible activities, and harm reduction. Page 3, lines 27 through 36. Here we are clarifying that drug checking equipment or materials used for this purpose would not be considered drug paraphernalia when used by harm reduction programs registered with New Hampshire DHHS. And on page 4, this is where we affirmatively state that drug checking is permitted in this context, that the state may allocate funding, including opioid abatement funds and federal funds intended for this purpose, but there is not a fiscal note. It does not require that the state allocate funding from the general funds or anything like that. We clarify that no person engaging in drug checking under these circumstances should be penalized for engaging in drug checking work, and that the result of drug checking analysis should not be used for nefarious purposes. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, but as I said, we do have Lauren McGinley is here from New Hampshire Harm Reduction Coalition. She is much more familiar with the equipment and what this would actually look like in practice. So I more technical questions should be referred to her.
Sounds good. Does she intend to testify? She didn't check off. You do?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative, for bringing the bill forward. I just want to clarify two things, so maybe two questions. First, in the opening of your testimony, you said that this came from, was it a study committee or a work session from previous legislation? This is not brand new. This is something that,
So,
could you
yeah, let me
clarify that again?
Thank you. That's a good question. So what happened last year, 2 years ago, a similar bill was introduced. I introduced the fentanyl and xylazine test strip bill, and my colleague introduced this bill. But it is not the same bill. What happened was we had it in Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. There were some concerns about the language and things like that. So we had a subcommittee in our committee that we had stakeholders come in, experts and all of that, and tried to, figure out how we could make it workable. We were able to do that, and we passed it out of the House. But it came over to the Senate. I will clarify that the concerns that were raised were very much based on, I think one of the things that we were trying to do was we were trying to allow for people to be able to go to a stationary space to be able to engage in drug checking. So we were trying to allow for individuals to be able to do that too. And I understand there were, concerns about that. Slippery slope wise and all that kind of stuff. So what we did was we limited it to just people who are agents working at an organization that are explicitly, that they are registered with the Department of Health and Human Services, and that they are explicitly authorized to do this. So that was what we did. We took out that, said, okay, understand the concerns. We don't need to have that in there. At least we should be able to have folks in these organizations to be able to do it.
May I follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the clarification on the origins of the bill. I'm curious about the choice of not including a caveat that the people that would be using the test strips didn't have to be LADACs.
So the test strips, just fentanyl and xylazine, that bill did pass. So we do have a caveat for that's already included in law. And actually you'll see it in this bill as well, because we added this language right to the same, let me see where we're at, to the same piece of, the same RSA. Let me see.
Was that 318B1?
Yeah, so how that,
Okay.
yeah, so that's already legal. We wanted to have, what we wanted to do originally, and what would be ideal, what I would consider the gold standard, is to be able to have people be able to not be in fear, and to be able to go and have something tested, right? So that was kind of why we had that in there in the first place. But understand that it's clearly not seen as reasonable, and I understand why. But the least we can do is allow organizations to be able to do the drug checking.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So is the vision for application of this bill to be not only at, recovery sites where where services available, to be able to engage more with the community? Or is this also intended to do outreach? Because I'm looking at page 4, lines 17 through 21, and it would seem that, there is that to be able to protect people who are doing outreach in the
Yeah.
community?
Yeah,
Got it.
absolutely. And I
Okay,
suggest you ask Lauren as well. There's, when you're talking about the particular types of equipment you're using, that also really helps to kind of paint a picture of what it would look like if folks were out there working.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Lauren, why don't you come up now? Just starting 226.
Typically present with another representative from our organization.
Sure.
We've done this now 3 years in a row. We've always done our acts together.
Okay, I don't want to break up the app.
All right. Hi, thank you so much for having us. My name is Lauren McGinley. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Harm Reduction Coalition. We are a coalition of now 10 harm reduction programs that are situated across our state. We help to either fund them with grants or supplies, or technical assistance and education within their communities, whatever is needed. We also operate 3 direct service programs ourselves. And I am here to answer any questions that you have about the potential implementation of a program like this. So I could just open it up to questions if people would prefer.
No, I'd like you to walk me through. I didn't quite get there in the
Sure.
first testimony.
Yeah. So we were here, I think we're going on 3 years now, and when we were passing the fentanyl and xylazine test strip bill, what we've seen from that has been pretty eye-opening in the way that contaminants within the drug supply can be identified and then behaviors modified to decrease the risk of bare minimum, what I can draw a conclusion from is fatal overdoses. Our programs also monitor non-fatal overdoses, and while we can celebrate that our state has put together a very comprehensive response to an overdose crisis, we are still seeing non-fatal overdoses at the same rate. So the introduction of being able to have the fentanyl test strips and the xylazine test strips really changed the way that we were able to talk to people about the way they use drugs, talk to people about what drugs they're using, and especially my personal favorite population, our recreational substance users were especially impacted by that. What we would hope to see with a bill like this is to be able to take those 2 ingredients that we can now identify in someone's drug supply, and instead of ask yes or no, we can just ask what's in it. And the what's in it is what's really critical to know right now to public health professionals, not just for the way that we counsel the people that we work with, not just in the supplies that we provide or the supplementary professionals we have with us. Xylazine is a great example. We need to have some nurse practitioners with us now because it's causing wounds that are so significant. But also identifying new contaminants, unknown contaminants within our drug supply can assist with diversion of whatever that chemical or substance is. I will use xylazine as another example because as soon as we were able to identify it, we were also able to identify it's not coming from a traditional source. It is for large animals. And so roping, that population of service provider into the conversations we have about the diversion of drugs and how they're entering the supply was critical. We would not have known to do that if we didn't know xylazine. So while I am happy with our state's response to fentanyl and xylazine, I am concerned and have been for a while of what are we missing? We haven't seen a decrease in the non-fatal overdoses. So at this point, I would like to see what is within our drug supply so that we can start to reorganize or add to the strategies that we are implementing right now when we talk to people about the way that they use drugs or the drugs that they use.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to sit with Lauren in this. I'm Dr. Carrie Nolte. I'm a family nurse practitioner in community health and healthcare for the homeless, and I'm also the chair of nursing at the University of New Hampshire. My views today are those of around my research and my personal involvement with the Harm Reduction Coalition. But I will leave here today and go right back to one of the harm reduction sites because we're actually doing data collection on a study to examine those wounds that are xylazine related and the frequency and really trying to empirically demonstrate the things we already know as clinicians, that these wounds are wreaking havoc on folks. They're a huge burden on our healthcare system. And as supplies change and move, meaning new additives come, we're always sort of, with the current state law as it is, we can't be proactive. We don't know what is in the supply until other states do their drug checking, until other places have, we can assume what's in Massachusetts is probably in New Hampshire, but we're missing a lot and it's not timely and our response can't be timely. So I did submit written testimony to the committee just earlier this morning, which has a lot of details, references, citations, etc. But one updated, stat was the overdose drug report through the medical examiner's office. Shows from 2024, 51 of the overdose deaths in the state had xylazine, and 9 had carfentanil, both things that can be examined from comprehensive drug checking. We don't know the other additives that may have been associated in some of those deaths because we can't do that drug checking now. So that's what we're looking for this legislation to enable us to do. The other concern that's come up new in the last year or so is concern about, illicit medications or things like the GLP-1s that people are using for weight loss that are being obtained from non-legal sites. And questions about the additives in those. And this is actually something that may be more and more problematic. We have seen a little bit of concern about bacterial infections introduced through people getting non-reputable sources. But I just want to make it broader that like these concerns come up and we can't respond right now. And we come here year after year now just to ask for permission to be able to set up these programs. They're not state funding. They would be grants that we would be looking to obtain. This is a high priority for research funding. It's also, some explicit funds that the Harm Reduction Coalition has missed out on because we can't offer comprehensive drug checking. So there are sort of cutouts of federal funds that were specific to that. So happy to take questions. The one question I wanted to just go back to is sort of the what will this look like? So having driven all around the state the past week to all 10 harm reduction programs, some are in a brick and mortar location with recovery community services embedded. Some are pop-up sites that happen once to twice a week from a van or another vehicle that's set up with not just harm reduction supplies, but they've a lot of wound care supplies to address these xylazine related wounds, naloxone, et cetera. And so they look and feel a little different in lots of places. In some sites, local health departments are offering HIV and Hep C testing right on site with them. But it's not a new program that we would be establishing these through. These would be within the currently operating programs as we see it.
Questions? Senator Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. And I'll direct this to either one of you. How many addicts would you say are actually using these test strips? If you could. ballpark?
I'll have data in 2 weeks on that, but my first preliminary would be like 75% or more of people that are engaging with the program, if not 100%.
I can offer that. Oh, I'm so sorry,
Did
Senator.
you say 100%? That, no.
I'd say 75 to 100% of participants.
I can offer that in the last year, we went through about 30,000 test strips. So, and we are handing them directly to the people requesting them. It's not like we're mailing out cases to unknown addresses. It's a live person that we're handing them to.
I can do a follow-up. And I don't believe you were present for this hearing, but earlier we had some bills that would have made mandatory sentencing for certain fentanyl charges, mostly distribution and possession with intent. And during those hearings, we heard a lot of testimony about the amount you possess and what would cause someone to overdose really relates to their tolerance. So I suppose measuring the amount of fentanyl that's in something might not necessarily be the safe thing. So I'm just wondering, you're telling me you haven't seen a reduction in the amount of overdoses we've seen, but we're not sure why. So expanding this, how would that address that? If they know how much fentanyl's in there, wouldn't it still come down to tolerance versus anything else?
So I can give kind of a broader answer, but only because we don't have the ability to measure how much right now. This would be the programming that we would be able to do it. Currently, the only thing we can measure is yes or no, and the sensitivity of the tests will vary between brands. What this would be able to do is not only identify how much, it would be able to identify what kind of fentanyl it is, and then
Potency.
the potency of it, but also the additional contaminants that are accompanying it. And those contaminants, I think, are starting to take center stage into what we're seeing in the way overdoses are changing in our state.
Yeah.
And you said different types of fentanyl. Can you just explain the different types, or at least to your knowledge?
So it could be like, we don't even know what types of, the big ones we know are fentanyl and carfentanil are the two that consistently come up. With this type of drug checking, we can get more specific. There's probably a lot of different varieties. But to add to, I mean, I think there isn't heroin in the state. There are no heroin-related deaths in the state. The opiate supply is fentanyl. So it's, often more about accidental overdose. So it's not people who regularly use fentanyl experiencing a fentanyl overdose. It's more fentanyl in another substance, in cocaine, in, a stimulant, or pressed into pills that look like something else. Does that help address?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. I think I'm a little confused. So I'd love some clarification. When Representative Newell introduced this bill, she said that these test strips don't detect amounts of substances, but that they are present. And now did I just hear you say that it would be detecting amounts?
I believe Representative Newell was addressing the bill that was passed.
Oh, the previous bill.
Yes, the test strip bill. So yes,
Okay.
they can detect
Thank you.
only yes or no.
Okay, so follow up. So these can detect not only the presence, but how much of a presence and multiple substances present in that particular, whatever is being tested with that, correct?
Absolutely. And what we had seen from Massachusetts drug checking was very much that there was not just 2 elements in the substance, there was 10. There was Benadryl, there was prescription meds, there was all of this that may have longer term health impacts. And so we can get to, 10 parts fentanyl, 5 parts Benadryl with this comprehensive drug checking.
Let's follow. So just so I'm clear, we have heard in this committee, and we know that out in the communities, there are substances that have been altered, that started out as something that is completely legal, and it's been altered to include fentanyl, xylazine, et cetera. And then there are others that are pressed pills to look like a very common medication, but is anything but that. So this is for both of those kinds of situations, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, and then I will point out there is a middle ground where there are substances sold as one substance, and in fact, many times do not contain any amount of that substance. And so, those other two pressed pills, people that are purchasing something they believe to be one drug, but it is in fact not, those are really high priority to prevent any first instance of overdose. So college kids purchasing cocaine who are not in fact getting any cocaine. This is a bigger conversation starter with people who are recreational drug users to say, I know you believe this is what's in it, but we have the ability to show you without doubt. And it's that without doubt and being able to present them the complex makeup of the drug supply that is a great touch point for people, for a certain population of person.
Thank you. You can help me. I'm probably to lunch than I should be on this. So the drug checking equipment is only going to be available at your harm reduction centers. So people who have, before they shoot up or do whatever, take anything, they can go to you and you'll check the purity of it. And then you'll know more about it. You'll know the concentration levels. So this equipment's only going to be available at your 10 centers.
I mean, I don't know if, I believe it also allows public health departments, and I think
Okay.
there was maybe one other carve out that was able to have it.
Okay.
But yes, our harm reduction sites, some of our harm reduction sites, these machines are quite expensive as well.
Okay, so I could come in, I could have whatever substance and you'll check it out and you give the drug back to the person.
Yes, yeah, and many times people are bringing somebody else's drugs in or drugs that they have found in someone's room or their roommate has been taking this. There's a whole host of people that will walk in and utilize that.
So they don't have any immunity though, do they, while they're transporting the stuff to you to get checked out if they got arrested?
Not with this
So,
bill. I
okay.
don't think so.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you both. Appreciate it.
This isn't limited to just those cells as a test.
People could have,
Anyone.
okay, that's what I was after. Thank you. That's good. Major Bill Bright, I see you in the back. Come on down. Good to see you today, sir.
Good afternoon, Senator Gannon and members of the committee. Thank you for hearing my testimony. For the record, my name is Bill Bright. I'm a major with the New Hampshire State Police. And I'm here today in opposition to this bill. But I want to make a couple of points. And the first is that, we all know that there is an opioid problem in the state, drug problem in general. In my opposition to this bill, I don't want it to be construed as that I am opposed to preventative programs or recovery programs or things that get people the help that they need to deal with the addictions that they have. I think as a whole, the state needs to look at this problem as a collaborative effort with law enforcement, all of these programs, including the harm reduction, working together. With that being said, I think there's some things in this bill that complicate what law enforcement is trying to do in cutting off the supply chain, which is, in my mind, that's the responsibility of law enforcement, is to tackle the supply chain side of this issue while the other programs are working from the other angles, and we can all work together to try and make it better for everybody. So there are a couple technical things about this bill, the way that it's written, that I wanted to point out. The first of which is on page 2, towards the bottom of the page in paragraph C. It says materials used by agents of organizations that provide harm reduction services authorized by the state, a county, a municipality, or a public health department in the processing, preparing, packaging, repackaging, storing, or containing of a nominal amount of a controlled substance for the purpose of confirmatory testing. So we've talked about that wording nominal amount at several different stages while this bill has worked its way through both last year and this year. And that's a definition that is not, it's not defined what a nominal amount of drugs is. So the way this is described, or the way that I understand it, if somebody is bringing a substance in to get checked to determine the purity, this does not, it doesn't establish what the amount is that needs to be brought in. It doesn't establish, what the person doing the checking is going to do with the amount of drugs, once they're done checking it, who's in possession of that now? Are we giving it back to a person and telling them that, hey, it's okay to use this drug, when we all know that that's a harmful substance that they're giving back to somebody? So I think it's a hard thing for me to grasp as, how that process is actually going to work. And it's essentially asking law enforcement to turn a blind eye to the possession of a substance if it's being brought to a checking site. And that's going to be some muddy waters to wade in for everybody. The other thing that I wanted to point out is that I do believe that the bill, the way it's written, contradicts itself. If you look further up on that page, so it'd be line 20, where it starts talking about, unless possessed in conjunction with other evidence forming the basis of a criminal charge involving the manufacturing, possessing with the intent to sell, or compounding pursuant to RSA 318B2I. So that seems to carve out, the intent is that law enforcement, if you have other evidence to suggest that this person, whoever that is, then you can charge them of possession of, the nominal amount or whatever. But if you look further back on page 4, starting at line 4, it says a person may obtain, possess, purchase. It doesn't say, a person can be anybody. It does not designate that person has to be the person working at the drug checking site or whatever program. And I think in general, there is nothing restricting somebody from the general public from buying drug checking equipment and basically establishing their own drug checking site or claiming to establish their own drug checking site. At least I don't see anything carved out in here. Maybe somebody else will have that answer. So if you look further down on line 17, again, it says, no person shall be arrested. It doesn't establish anything about the people that are doing the checking, that may be the intent of the bill. I don't know. So those are the things that I wanted to point out are concerns with this bill.
Quick question for you.
Sure.
So when you were saying your first part, you sort of were alluding to liability. Would the harm reduction centers, they hand someone back, whatever the drug is, person overdoses, wouldn't they be liable for
I would have to,
facilitating?
that would be a major concern of mine. Like, I just can't see it being a good idea to hand a harmful drug back to somebody or to test somebody's product that they have and tell them, yeah, that's safe to use because it doesn't have xylazine. I mean, we all know different amounts of fentanyl can affect different people different ways, and depending on the tolerance that they've built up. So I just think that's a major risk and something that we need to think about as a state if that's how we want to handle it.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. I'm wondering have you worked in collaboration with some of the harm reduction organizations that would be included in this bill?
So I've testified on this bill a few times. I think I testified last year. I testified in the House, testifying now.
Yeah.
I haven't been asked to weigh in on any of the wording or to weigh in on any of this by anybody.
Okay, I'm not quite my question. If I could, maybe I'll rephrase. So I think that there might be a little disconnect in the the actual process that this bill allows for. And when you would, my question is, where did I circle that? So you had testified, I see, okay, you had testified about, wanting law enforcement to focus on the supply chain. And this bill is really focusing on the users, not the suppliers. And, in the context of harm reduction, I think I think that your section 17 through 21, could you possibly see that as when someone is engaging with a harm reduction, someone who's working for a harm reduction agency, it's not like a grocery store where you're checking things out. There's the idea is that if you have the opportunity to engage with somebody who has what they believe to be Adderall, and it turns out it's actually xylazine pressed into an Adderall, press tablet, that there's an opportunity to engage with them about what comes next. How did they, what is their engagement within using these substances? Not just, hey, check this out for me, and then I'm going to take it back. But it's actually, there's more that
Sure.
happens in that
I
moment.
understand that there could be an
Yeah.
opportunity to educate.
Yes,
But
yes.
I do believe that, I could be wrong about this, but I believe that, the fentanyl test strips and the xylazine test strips did get passed, which in that scenario where the Adderall pill is tested, I believe that those, right now, that can happen. So this goes beyond that, is my understanding, unless I'm reading it wrong. So that's already established that can take place right now, is my understanding. I think this goes further to allow for the testing of purity, amounts, all of those things, which, yes, I understand that that could also offer an opportunity for education. But my point is that we're muddying the waters, as in, okay, how does this actually happen? Are we allowing people to possess drugs and bring them to us to test? And is law enforcement supposed to ignore that on the way there, on the way back? And the question about the user versus the dealer, we've had these conversations in the past. That yes, there are different levels. Like, there are some people that will get help on their own. There's some people that will get help when they're educated. There's some people that won't get help until they get arrested by the police, and it's a wake-up call. And then there are some people that just won't get help, and law enforcement needs to be a part of that to try and make our streets safer. So I think that this makes it more difficult for law enforcement to do their portion of the job. And I think in general, as a whole, we need to look at how do we tackle this problem, and how do we let all the entities do their job the right way.
Can I follow up, Mr. Chairman? So, thank you for clarifying, like, where the state police are on this. And yes, we did pass the test strips. This takes those test strips a little bit further, instead of just, as we heard in the testimony, of testing and saying, yep, that definitely has fentanyl in it, or nope, that definitely doesn't have fentanyl in it. Then we take it a little step further and say, actually, this has 6 things in it, and maybe we could talk about that. Why would seeing that there's more to the picture, like getting more information at that moment of harm reduction and making that personal connection with someone who is abusing substances in the moment, getting more information to them, be impeding the work of the state police? Because we're still working. I mean, that person may have come in for the test strip for the yes or the no, but now they can get more information, and the harm reduction community can give more information. And why wouldn't more information be better? in that moment?
Yeah, so I don't want it to get confused with that. I think that those programs are a bad idea, that I think education is a bad idea. I do think it's a great idea, and opportunities to talk to people are always good. However, as was pointed out, is that I think there's a big risk that those people will be taking here. I think that there's the gray area of, okay, is this person, is there potential for this person to be figuring out how much fentanyl is in their product, that they have a larger amount at home that they're going to then split up, based on how much, whatever the test results are. There's many nefarious ways that people will try and exploit laws. And I just think that those things need to really be thought about before, we go forward with something like this.
Thank you, Mr. Bright. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Moving along. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Johannan. Joe, one of the many things I appreciate, I sort of let things go a little long. If you can keep it short but sweet. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very short. Information that could possibly save someone's life should never be illegal for anybody. I don't care if it's a harm reduction group, police, the drug dealer himself, or the cartel kingpin. It's horrible to make information that could save someone's life be not allowed to be obtained. This has to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hannan. Any questions? Seeing none. Did anyone else wish to, I'm sorry. Come on up, Ms. Sargent. I haven't seen you testify in a long time.
I think this is the first for me.
Yeah, I don't remember in 8
Good.
years ever seeing you up here.
Couple times. Good afternoon, Chairman Gannon, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Sargent. I work for Champaign Capital Group, here today testifying for the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police. We have detectives on their way, stuck on the highway. They have emailed me their testimony. So I won't read all of it, but we're here in opposition to House Bill 226. We would echo the comments of Major Bright as well, but I do have a little bit more information. We are also concerned, we have also testified the last 3 years on this bill, and we continue to be concerned about, on page 2, under C, the nominal amount. And then in her testimony, the detective said there is no measurable amount listed for nominal within the bill. In most cases, nominal means small amount. She said that she can personally attest that the majority of drug-related arrests are from persons possessing small amounts. These arrests commonly lead to the cultivation of cooperating individuals, which inevitably leads to large seizures of illegal narcotics from drug traffickers. And then the other section, I'll just skip down. The other section is again in section 5XE, drug checking packaging. The comments from Manchester PD are that the majority of the proactive work done within the city of Manchester is based on street level drug interdiction. This almost always involves drug checking packaging as defined in the bill. They're concerned they won't be able to investigate cases if the person claims they are engaged in harm reduction, or if they claim they are an agent of such an organization as this cannot be proven. And so it goes into much more detail. When they get here, we'll submit the written testimony, but we just want to be on record. We're concerned about this as well.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to testify? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I thought I checked the speaking box, but Emma Savini, I'm the Children's Behavioral Health Policy Coordinator at New Futures. I'm here in instead of Kate Fry, who's typically here on these issues. She's our Vice President of Advocacy. New Futures is just here in support of House Bill 226. I will be brief because I know that everybody else has covered it much more eloquently than I could. But we are here in support because the contaminants found, such as fentanyl and xylazine and fentanyl analogs, are frequently occurring in
the illicit drug supply throughout the United States, which creates a heightened risk for overdose. Legalizing drug testing equipment like in HB 226 is a low-cost way to prevent drug overdoses and reduce harm, and the CDC and SAMHSA have emphasized the importance of this as a harm reduction strategy and permit federal funds to be used for these for the purchase of these testing kits. Leaving the law in New Hampshire as is could create confusion and may deter uptake of funding for these promising interventions. For these reasons, New Futures encourages the committee to vote ought to pass on this bill. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Ms. Vale. How you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. Good afternoon, Representative Chairman Gannon and the members of the Judiciary Committee. I'm before you today to, actually, I'm Suzanne Vale and I'm representing Nashua Ward 3 and I'm presenting House Bill 301. House Bill 301 aims to permit alternative treatment centers to utilize one additional cultivation location, which can be a greenhouse. And this would result in significant energy cost savings. And additionally, the cannabis grown in the natural light is known to have a broader spectrum of attributes, offering added benefit to patients. A similar bill passed the House and the Senate last year. And I wanted to mention that currently cannabis cultivation occurs in enclosed grow houses, one for each ATC, that relies on artificial lighting and climate control systems, which consume substantial electricity for heating, cooling, during the growing and the product development phases, including the packaging. What the bill does is it ensures regulatory compliance with existing Department of Health and Human Services rules, as well as local regulations. Citizens in towns will have a say if they want an ATC to have an additional facility. They may be more amenable to a second grow house that is much like the one now that uses the energy that they have now, but it's also used for production. So having an additional place to grow does not have to be a greenhouse, but it can be a greenhouse, and that's the way the bill operates. So all of the things that happened when the ATCs first opened up, where they decided where to locate themselves. The communities went through rigorous regulatory guidelines in order to elicit the responses and the feedback from everyone who would be involved, including the patients and their ability to access in a local manner as possible. So as amended by the House, the bill addresses concern raised by the state police regarding the potential overdevelopment of the ATC capacity as a result of this bill. The amended version allows just only one new location for the dispensaries. The previous bill, you could have more than one location. The bill has nothing, just finally, has nothing to do with legalization. It has the opportunity to improve circumstances for the patients by reducing their out-of-pocket costs. It helps the ATCs to improve their service to patients and to reduce their carbon footprint and to help the patients with more products that they can use to get better. This, again, what we do suggest, and it has been made available to me, is an opportunity to go to perhaps Prime ATC, which is now Granite Leaf Cannabis. They have a facility and they have given legislators a tour in order to help people fully appreciate the nature of the program, the spirit of the program, but really the strict regulatory constraints that are on the ATCs and what their challenges are. So with that, I just wrap it up and say thank you for taking my testimony.
Thank you, Representative. You mentioned higher attributes grown in better lighting. Is that higher THC? Is it just the plant grows better?
I don't think it would be so much related to THC. I think it would be more related to the cannabinoids, the terpenes. And so those are other aspects of the plant that are not mind altering and that also have the benefit to some of the inflammatory diseases people have.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for taking my question. So I just want to clarify, if this goes forward, the additional cultivation location, does it need to be within a certain boundary of the current location of the ATC? Or can it be somewhere else in the same town that originally gave the permit? Like, do you have to go through the whole process all over again?
Yes, definitely, no matter where the location is in proximity. So
Okay.
actually, the way this bill is written, it does not say that it has to be local to the ATC dispensary or to their, I don't want to keep calling it a grow house because the facility that I saw is where they synthesize everything, keep it separated, and guarantee the strict testing requirements that we have in the state. So again, I just defer back to answer the question that what the bill does is it ensures that towns and citizens go through that solicitation process so they can say what's on their mind and get that opportunity. Now, in terms of what was done in the past, I was expecting a witness who can say much more about that, but as you heard, I-93 was closed, and so some of us were having a lot of difficulty getting here.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Does anyone else wish to testify on HB 301? Okay. Come on down. They didn't have your paper check.
Thank you. And for the record, my name is Jerry Knurk. My testimony is being passed around. I'm the chair of the Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board and a retired surgeon and retired legislator. Again, I serve as the chair of the TCMOB, which is statutorily charged with the medical oversight of the New Hampshire Therapeutic Cannabis Program. And the board is composed of 10 medical providers representing different medical specialties, a therapeutic cannabis patient, medical director of DHHS, and a clinical representative from an ATC. TCMOB supports HB 301. The bill would allow ATCs to add greenhouses as cultivation locations as it is amended. A major problem for our patients, which we hear all the time, is the high cost of the product. HB 301 will enable lower cost production and therefore lower cost for the patients. HB 301 is passed in the House OTPA on a voice vote. Indoor cultivation, as is currently required, significantly increases the cost of production, primarily secondary to the electricity needed for sufficient lighting to obtain good plant growth. Those lights actually do produce a lot of heat too. Growing in a greenhouse will allow the use of sunlight, which will significantly diminish the electricity cost. It's also very helpful in maintaining greenhouse temperature in cold weather. I have a greenhouse at my home, which I use for growing vegetables all year round. And it's always striking that without ventilation, in February on a sunny day, it can hit over 100 degrees. I don't need to be adding heat because it really is helpful. If anything, you have to have ventilation, but that would be normal in any greenhouse anyway. So growing in a greenhouse will also lessen heating costs. And also, as mentioned by Representative Vail, cannabis just grows better in natural sunlight than in artificial light. And that kind of makes sense. Plants evolved to grow with sunlight, not with artificial light. And so that is their optimum environment. What that actually will do will increase some of the total amount of cannabinoid that's produced. That will further decrease the cost, because if somebody is going to buy a particular product with a certain amount of cannabinoid, whether it be CBD or THC or one of the other cannabinoids, if you can produce more of it from one plant, the cost then can go down. So it should be noted that the additional cultivation location will be subject to all the same rules for security that already exist in the current cultivation location. There's no loosening of security if HB 301 is passed. So again, TCMOB voted 8-0 to support HB 301. One member, who was the representative of an ATC, recused himself from the vote due to potential conflict of interest. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Representative. And go ahead, Sinderaps.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question. You said that if they're allowed to have this greenhouse cultivation facility, the cost would go down. How much do you believe the cost would actually be reduced?
Oh, I don't have a number on that. But basically one of their big costs is electricity. But I do not have numbers on that.
Well,
I'm talking about the cost of whatever is being sold to the patient. How much do you think the price of what's being sold will be reduced?
One would follow the other. If they can produce more cheaply, they will sell it more cheaply. And as a result, I do not have data to tell you what the percentage decrease in cost would be. We expect it would go down.
Thank you.
Sure.
other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Representative Sue Homala.
Hi, I'm Sue Humola, New Hampshire Chairman of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this bill. This bill actually is very similar to the one Governor Sununu vetoed last July. There are no additional security and safety parts to this bill when you are starting to grow a product outside or in a greenhouse or a less secure environment than an indoor location. One of the things that we hear a lot of times is for reducing patient costs, which is a compassionate goal that I truly share. But one of the things that the alternative treatment centers, if I recall correctly, when they were given this testimony in the House, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I recalled them saying they still had room in their grow houses. They weren't at capacity already. So, there's a lot of already additional or costs that are already being operated in these grow houses that they could increase capacity and have more supply to reduce costs for their card holders. One of the things that I'd like to also advocate for is that, again, we're talking about trying to reduce costs for patients. What we don't really know is it'd be really great to see, well, what are their costs? What is a line-by-line cost of what it costs them, what they sell it for, what they profit on? When I was here last time, I had provided to you that the alternative treatment centers the state sanctioned sponsored ones, they each give around $500,000 each year. This was all, let me say, in 2022, they gave almost $500,000 in compassionate care discounts, which is, I'm sure, very appreciated by those who in need and veterans. If you're giving away $500,000 in compassionate care discounts in 1 year, that profit's got to be a pretty penny. So I would just, before we start making all decisions on reducing patient cost, I'd like to see the books opened. You all open it, not me, but you all take a good evaluation of what those books are and what the profit level is now. One of the things, last thing I just want to point out really quickly is in line 8, the one thing I really have a problem with in this bill is it says the department shall, in conjunction with local governing bodies, solicit input from qualifying patients and designated caregivers. The issue that I have is this bill doesn't require notification of law enforcement personnel, law enforcement associated organizations, drug prevention groups, or even drug addiction specialists when a new location is being considered. Yet, it animates 13,000, there's 13,000 plus TCP card holders. So by notifying them, what that does is actually animates a large group of people that can descend on a select board meeting and, quite frankly, overwhelm the testimony with why they need this location, this cultivation site to open up. I do feel like it's statute mandated inappropriate lobbying. So that's all I have.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Questions? Seeing none, thank you. Dr. Hannon?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. I'm speaking in strong support of House Bill 301. It's a modest but important first step in strengthening New Hampshire's therapeutic cannabis program. It does one simple thing, which you are all aware of. It allows each ATC to operate one additional cultivation site, specifically a greenhouse, under the same vigorous oversight and zoning laws already in place. Why is this important? First, patient access and affordability that you've heard about. New Hampshire's therapeutic cannabis patients already face high costs, limited product variety, and supply inconsistencies. By allowing ATCs to cultivate in more than one location, we empower them to increase yields, stabilize supply, and potentially lower costs. Particularly critical for patients on fixed incomes or managing chronic pain. Second, greenhouse gases are sustainable and cost-effective. Cultivating cannabis in greenhouses allows for reduced energy consumption, lower environmental impact, and more natural growing conditions, which gives a better product in many cases. At a time when energy prices are unpredictable, supporting sustainable infrastructure like greenhouses helps both providers and patients alike. Third, and community engagement and oversight are built into this bill, despite the criticisms we've heard about oversight. HB 301 requires collaboration with local officials and input from patients, caregivers, community residents. That means any new cultivation site won't just be imposed, even if people stack a meeting like they could theoretically do for anything. So it's a bad argument to use to not allow that process. Lastly, this bill maintains strict regulatory control. No part of the existing legal structure is weakened. Every new site must follow the Department of Health and Human Services rules, RSA 126X requirements, and local ordinances. This isn't a free-for-all, it's a targeted, accountable expansion that reflects lessons learned since the therapeutic cannabis program began. In conclusion, it's a practical, patient-focused improvement. It strengthens the infrastructure behind the program that thousands of Granite Staters rely on for relief, and it does so in a way that is sustainable, community-informed, and tightly regulated. I urge the committee to vote ought to pass and move this bill forward. Thank you for your time and service to our state.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Representative Heath Howard. Good afternoon, Heath. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Sorry, apologies.
No
Senators.
apologies necessary.
All right. To introduce myself, I'm Representative Heath Howard. I represent the towns of Stratford and Barrington in Stratford District 4. Today, I'm speaking in favor of House Bill 301. As a patient of the therapeutic cannabis program, I know exactly how expensive our current products are for inpatient, in-state patients. And it's no question that if you go to Vermont, Massachusetts, or Maine, you can go into a medical dispensary and find cheaper products anywhere. We need to help try to increase supply so that we can lower the costs, because obviously with demand rising and being controlled by entry into the therapeutic cannabis program, we can pretty much assume exactly how much patients are going to have to be paying. And we are definitely overcharging them. If you look at the market rates around, as I said, the other states, we are by far the most expensive. So this is a good way of using market forces in a safe, structured manner where we're increasing that supply so that we can lower the costs. I would also recommend you guys to get in contact with Matt Simon over at Granite Leaf Cannabis and ask to see if you can set up a tour at one of their grow facilities or at their grow facility because it is really amazing as to how it's all set up, how it's managed, this type of security and process that people have to go through to get in, and kind of why it would be beneficial to have a grow house, an outdoor grow house as an alternative. With that being said, I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Seeing none, you have a great day. Matt, I didn't see your hair, Simon, unless, oh, Matt, you've totally changed. Good afternoon, Mr. Schmidt.
So clearly I'm not Matt Simon. I'd like to apologize that his expertise isn't available to the committee today. He is stuck in the same 93 road mess that my friend Beth Sargent, some of her folks were stuck in earlier. So just briefly, he did text me a few things just to convey to the committee. First, some of the provisions in this bill are allowable in other states. So we would like to have the New Hampshire ATCs have the same opportunities that some in other states are having. Second, the intent isn't to help increase production, at least from Granite Leaf's perspective. They just think that this would be a more efficient and effective way to grow some of the product that they would like to be able to provide to the therapeutic patients. That would help, as has been mentioned before, potentially reduce the costs to the end users. And I was asking Matt, why is that the case? He texted me back, sunlight is always cheaper than electricity. So if we're able to save money on the electricity side, I won't get into the agricultural benefits. I don't know enough about it to comment competently on that, but I can at least understand that. I think when you do look at the bill that's passed by the House versus what's introduced, you can see the attempts to narrow it. It's made to ensure that they're registered under RSA 126, which is the New Hampshire Therapeutic Cannabis Law. It is an additional cultivation center, which shall be a greenhouse. So a lot of the effort in the House was meant to narrow this, to differentiate it from the bill that was vetoed last year in order to address some of the concerns which I think were conveyed by law enforcement. So again, I apologize. I probably wouldn't be able to answer more of the technical questions that Matt could if he were here, but I'm certainly happy to take some back to him subsequent to the hearing.
Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
You heard what I said right a moment ago, right, Senator Abbas?
this may be something to bring to Mr. Simon. I understand the potential of lowering the cost to the patient. I assume if the ATCs are advocating for this, they must have done some type of analysis on this to be sure that it would actually do something to that effect. Can you perhaps provide the committee some information on how much they believe the price to the patient would be reduced and how they would guarantee that if we did pass this law?
I'm happy to ask,
Thank you.
as long as you don't vote on it before I'm able to follow up.
To the chairman.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Does anyone else wish to testify on HB 301? Seeing none, thank you. That'll end the hearing. Okay. Thanks. Okay. I'm I'm opening the hearing for House Bill 190, FN. Representative Heath Howard, you're right there again. You were back and now you're forward. You're fast. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Senators. I really appreciate your time today. And today, again, for the record, my name is Representative Heath Howard. I represent the towns of Stratford and Barrington in Stratford District 4. And today, I'm going to be introducing HB 190. So HB 190 would increase the purchase and possession limit for therapeutic cannabis patients from 2 to 4 ounces. This is done for a variety of reasons. A, we have a very small number of dispensaries across the state, the farthest north being in North Conway. So people in the northern parts of the state find it very difficult to get down to the southern half to actually get to fill their, I keep wanting to say prescriptions, but that's the wrong term. They're trying to get their therapeutic cannabis, but it's very difficult in terms of the length that they have to drive in order to get it. Secondly, a number of people actually do make oils in order to actually consume their cannabis. So they'll put it into a baking oil of some sort and make brownies, and that uses a very high concentration of or a high amount of cannabis, which usually the higher amount that you put in, the greater the yield you're going to get back. So people usually prefer to do that in higher levels versus kind of what we typically see where you have people who are smoking it using smaller amounts in relative size. So because of those reasons, it is something where if we can help increase the purchase and possession rate, we'll kind of be in line with a number of other states, because for the most part, 2 ounces is actually on the low end for a lot of the medical states. Most of the other states in the country are at 2.5, with a number of others being at 3 and 4 ounces, and even up to 8 ounces in places like California. So it's just trying to make sure that people have access to the medicine that they need, decreasing the total amount of trips that they need to take to the dispensary every month, and providing an opportunity for them to get the actual amount of cannabis that they use. Because it is something where right now, because of the way that we've set it up, it is fairly difficult. With that being said, it's a fairly straightforward bill, and I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. The Honorable Jerry Nurk, back down. Jerry, I'm going to try something different with you today. I know you know the material wicked well, so don't read it to me because we got that. We'll read them. Just talk to us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So yes, once again, for the record, Jerry Knirk, Chair of the Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board and retired surgeon. And yeah, this bill is the same as the bill that we had in a previous year. The TCMB voted unanimously to support the previous one. We processed again this one and again decided to continue our same support, which again will increase the quantity that a person can buy from 2 to 4 ounces, either a designated caregiver or a patient. It also increases the quantity. Here's a key issue: the quantity that can be dispensed by an ATC to a patient or their caregiver from 2 ounces to 4 ounces in a 10-day period. And this will really help our patients a lot. As was mentioned earlier, edibles are expensive, so a lot of patients will make their own edibles. They need a bunch of, a good amount to be able to follow the recipe and do that. They can't just drive back to the ATC to get more, because if they do that, then they're in violation of the possession limit. But the main reason for this actually has to do with accessibility for patients. And for a lot of patients in our rural areas, a trip to the ATC is a very long process. It can be particularly troubling if you're an older patient who doesn't like driving at night or doesn't like driving much at all, or if you're a patient in pain, if any of you have had significant, let's say even back pain, trying to sit in a car and drive is not necessarily a whole lot of fun. And our oncology patients who also need larger doses because they're using it generally for palliative care. So it's far better for that patient to be able to make fewer trips to the ATC. So here's an example though. I live, because I'm up in Freedom, that's a fair distance from Conway, 45 minutes. So I've got a 1.5 hour round trip if I want to go get my prescription filled. So what do? Well, they give me 3 months worth of the medication. I just got my blood pressure med. I get 3 months worth. I don't have to go back every 10 days to get it. I go once every 3 months to get it. So the bottom line is that this will make it a lot easier for our patients, and that's why TCMOB has voted to support this, to save money for the patients, but particularly to be easier on our patients who have long drives, particularly in the rural areas. And I'll be glad to take any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? No, Senator Ellis? Go ahead, Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. In your written testimony, you say that this will save the patient's money. So I guess I'm not familiar with the cost of 2 ounces for a patient. I know it can vary on product, but what's the average cost of that? And if they were to buy 4 ounces instead of 2, how much cheaper would it be?
Well, actually, the reason for the cost saving, because I didn't read it, is because they often make their own edibles. If they say, I want to use edibles, the edibles are expensive in the ATCs. And so if they say, well, I'm going to make my own, the batches, it's to make it economical to make an edible as well, you would use a larger volume to make what you need to make. So it just makes it easier for them to make their own edibles. That's the main issue. I do not know that there are any discounts for how much you buy. I have no earthly idea because I've been on a tour, but I'm not a patient. I have no idea how that part works. So primarily it saves money by allowing them to make their own edibles. And generally, and again, I have to get this secondhand from our patient representative because I don't make this stuff. But apparently it's better to use a larger quantity to make things work right for the edible. Because, for example, I did have a patient who I was not ever able to use this because I quit practicing at the end of 2015 and we didn't become operational 16. But he reported to me that he would only need to take about a 1/4 to 1/3 of a little brownie at night. And then he never needed to take any opioids because that worked for him. So that's because the concentration was fairly high. So if you had to eat 5 brownies to get the concentration you need, that's going to be a whole lot more calories. And the issue is if you can have more product, you can make more concentrated edibles and therefore have to consume a lesser amount.
So just for an average flower, how much would 2 ounces cost a patient?
Again, I don't know. I could go on the website and look it up, but you could also do the same if you go to the grant. Actually, we do have a representative in ATC is here, and I think Alicia Bennett, could probably answer that question cleanly.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Sue Homella.
Hi, Sue Hamola, New Hampshire Chairman of Smart Purchase to Marijuana. Just to answer your question, 400 milligrams of edible cannabis oil from Granite Leaf Cannabis is $48. It can be purchased in the oil form and used appropriately. Somebody doesn't need to take raw product and make their own oil. That's already available. The one thing that I wanted to point out to this is obviously 2 to 4 ounces is significant as far as a number. The one issue that I have with this bill is that it actually doesn't subsequently increase the frequency by which people can purchase. So that you're just allowing people to have more product, but not say, not go every 30 days, something like that. You'll notice that in the testimony I provided you, I did a little graph of what other states do. These laws are always changing, but you'll see that there's quite a few states that actually tie the amount of product you can buy to a number of frequencies, say like a 30-day supply, things like that. This basically just doubles what we allow anyways during the same time frame. And the only other ones, the other states that actually have allow more product, you'll notice that they're usually fairly liberal when it comes to their drug policies. So does anyone have any questions? That's all I have.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Jody Newell, are you still here, Representative? You checked off but support, but I couldn't tell if you want to speak, so we'll assume you did not. Joe, I didn't have you come up again, did I? Dr. Hannon, good to see you as always.
First half of my speech, because they already said it and we're trying to cut time.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening today. It's important to note this bill doesn't expand who can access cannabis. It simply makes the program work better for those already enrolled and approved. And the therapeutic cannabis program remains tightly regulated with strict oversight, so concerns about misuse or diversion are minimal. It is a felony. Finally, the fiscal note confirms that the bill imposes no new costs on the state and may actually reduce the administrative burden by limiting repeat visits and enforcement complexity. In short, it's a patient-focused, fiscally neutral, and medically appropriate improvement to New Hampshire's cannabis law. We wouldn't expect the government to be able to regulate how much insulin we can get, how much pain medication we can get for chronic pain or something that's extremely urgent for someone, or life-saving medication. For many people, this is life-saving. So to say that doubling it is doubling, it's not doubling if it's maybe not even half as much as someone needs. If I was doubling the amount of insulin you got and you needed 3 times as much, you'd probably die. Not saying someone's going to die because they don't get this, but it's possible. It's extremely important that we allow patients to get what they need. And if you support medical cannabis in any way, you should allow patients to be trusted, their caregivers to be trusted, and pass this bill, please.
I'm just going to ask you a side note. So we don't know what the THC level is. So when you say doubling, if it's double a very small low THC, it's not much. And if it's double a high THC, it's a totally different thing. Don't you think the whole regulation is off because we don't treat it like a regular drug where you'd have so many grams, so many milligrams? Isn't the whole system flawed where we don't know concentration and how strong the drug is?
I think the system is working out perfectly. If you only allow a certain amount, they're going to make stronger and more concentrated product. So if people complain about 90% or 80% THC concentrations, you might get close to 100% eventually someday if it's possible. Scientifically, I'm not sure. But if you limit how much someone's going to have, they're going to make it stronger. So it's really not just arbitrary. It's ridiculous to have any limit on a medicine outside of the provider and the patient's experience.
Thank you, Dr. Hannon. Any other questions? Nope. Thank you. Have a good day. Does anyone else wish to testify on HB 190? Seeing none, the hearing's over. This starts the hearing for HB 380. We're moving right along. Representative Vale, good to see you again.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable members of the Senate Judiciary Committee once again. I am Suzanne Vale, and I'm a representative from Nashua Ward 3. I'm going to quickly just tell you about House Bill 380, which amends the penalty for unauthorized sales of therapeutic cannabis by a qualifying patient or caregiver. It eliminates the additional felony penalty that carries a potential additional $300,000 fine and 7-year prison sentence for the patient who diverts their supply to someone who's not another patient or caregiver. At the program's inception, participation was limited to individuals that had severe disabilities, debilitating conditions, and many of them were fatal, such as cancer. The state meant to protect itself at the time. There was no legal cannabis around our state, and we wanted to make sure that this life-saving alternative treatment was available to those who qualify, but that the patients weren't incentivized to sell their therapeutic cannabis to somebody else. These patients at the time had exhausted other treatments, and the program was controlled and established to make sure that this just wasn't an enticement to get some therapeutic cannabis on the street where it's not considered therapeutic. The decision here that is to be made in terms of the bill is whether or not the consequences of the 2 felonies and financial punishments actually fit the crime. Removal from the program and prosecution like any other person who decides to sell cannabis illegally should not be we should reduce the consequences that the patients face. The consequences of a person who is not a patient are severe and significant, and patients should not be singled out, and a felony should not apply to them that is on par with holding a person up at gunpoint and other violent crimes. So I handed you just a quick blurb that has the punishments that I'm talking about, and I'm asking for the second felony to be removed. When you look at the bill, you'll see that there are 4 sections, and those are the places where the language would persist should this bill go through, where we would want to correct it. And with that, I conclude my testimony. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them either now or if you want to send them to me at another time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't see any questions, so thank you very much for your testimony. Representative Heath Howard, are you still here? Or is he outside? Okay, I can come back to him if he's... Okay, he is. Great. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Representative. How you doing?
Good. Thank you so much, Senators. Again, for the record, my name is Representative Heath Howard. I represent the towns of Stratford and Barrington in Stratford District 4. And today I'm speaking in favor of HB 380 because I believe that this duplicative penalty that we're placing on therapeutic cannabis patients is completely unnecessary. I think that the current law that affects every single person in the state, regardless of their status as being a member of the therapeutic cannabis program, is sufficient in providing enough penalties to try to prevent some of these crimes that are happening. However, I do feel that it is especially unreasonable that we're going after specifically patients in their ability to A, treat the ailments and conditions that they are living with, and B, also kind of doubling down in harming them and penalizing them on top of the additional charges that they would face for selling therapeutic cannabis. So because of these reasons, I believe that we desperately need to have this bill so that we can avoid these duplicative penalties and make sure that people are provided the same rights that they are deserving of. I'm open to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing none, we're all set. Thanks very much. Representative Nurk, he's still here. So flip those right over and just talk to me.
And by the way, it is Knurk. We actually pronounce the K. But anyway, once again, for the record, Jerry Knurk, Chair of the Therapeutic Cannabis Medical Oversight Board. And it's been stated, currently the therapeutic cannabis laws include this penalty for therapeutic cannabis patients who sell cannabis that is way out of proportion to what is the penalty for a person who is selling otherwise. When this was established in statute in 2013, because that's when the therapeutic cannabis statute was passed, cannabis was not so widely available recreationally in adjacent states. But now, given the easy accessibility to recreational cannabis and its much lower cost compared to therapeutic cannabis, the risk of diversion of medical cannabis is really vanishingly small. I mean, somebody would have to have their head examined to go out and buy expensive therapeutic cannabis and then sell it to somebody recreationally when they could buy it for a whole lot less. So now that it's widely available regionally to adults, legally in all of our surrounding states, it's really appropriate to remove that sentencing disparity. So the point is that if you do sell cannabis and you're a therapeutic cannabis patient, you still would lose your certification, which is one of the major issues, and you would still be subject to the exact same penalties as a non-patient. You just would not have all this extra penalty that non-patients have. The patients have. The amended version which is actually good, add some appropriate warnings to patient regarding the penalties. It'd be on the packaging and on the forms that they get for certification and so on. Bottom line is that TCMOB believes that therapeutic cannabis patients should not be treated any differently than any other individual who unlawfully sells cannabis in the state, other than that added penalty of revocation of certification. And the board voted 9-0 to support this bill. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Joe Hannon. Giving you a workout today, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. This is something that we've heard already. It just removes the second additional penalty that the rest of us don't have to deal with unless we're a medical patient. There are already penalties. So this doesn't really affect diversion or anything like that. If someone is caught in the program or one of the caregivers, they could lose their card and full access to medical program in New Hampshire. I think that depriving someone of their rights to essential medication is at least adequate punishment for breaking such a law. And that's what it is. It's depriving someone of their human rights by not letting them have medication because they did something. And that something is sharing it with another patient, perhaps accidentally or whatnot. But this doesn't weaken enforcement. It actually restores fairness. And I think that we need to have the laws fairly applied to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hannon. We are all set. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify on HB 380? I'm sorry, Sue, come back up.
Hi, Sue Hamola, New Hampshire Chairman of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We oppose this effort. The current penalties are clear and straightforward. They've had no issues. There's been no issues created with TCP cardholders or caregivers being unfairly prosecuted. At best, it seems like this is a bill in search of a problem. And at worst, it seems like it's just another attempt to continually weaken the safeguards we have here in New Hampshire. Somebody had made a comment that when the program was first started, with the lack of cannabis around other states, and our program focused it on the most debilitating issues. Well, I feel like that this bill is needed more than ever because right now we have an exhaustive list of qualifying conditions that the bar is so incredibly low for qualifying conditions as we've added anxiety onto the latest one. I feel that it's needed more than ever. And then also this bill combined with a lot of the other efforts that we've seen coming out, HB 53, which was ITL'd out of this committee, but still is waiting a full Senate vote. That bill combined with doubling up the amounts of possession that caregiver or TCP cardholders can have, all of it, when you look at it in total, is really a very alarming attempt to expand the medical marijuana program and its safeguards. That's all I have.
Question for you, Ms. Amella.
Yes, sir.
Has anyone ever been charged with a felony? Someone with one of these ID cards?
Not that I've heard, but I have not researched this in depth. But I'm going to tell you right now, if somebody was unfairly charged with this felony, we'd be hearing about it. That's for sure.
Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Does anyone else wish to testify on HB 380? Seeing none, we'll end the hearing. Representative Sullivan? We're going to start testimony on HB 198, legalizing certain quantities of cannabis and establishing penalties for smoking and vaping of cannabis in public. Welcome, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Jared Sullivan. I'm the state rep from Bethlehem and Franconia, which represents Grafton District 2. So, as most of you on this committee are well aware, this is sort of the perennial issue in the state, how to legalize marijuana. And looking back at the history, our problems in getting it, a lot of the disagreements, whether they're in my side of the body or my side of the wall, your side of the wall, are generally on how to sell it. And this bill doesn't touch that. And so the majority of people in, certainly on my side of the body, and even last year, we got a vote coming out of your chamber, want to legalize it. And when it gets tripped up on just selling it, I felt like this is a good way to take the language from last year. This is very similar to the bill that was passed from the Senate last year in terms of how to legalize it. So the quantities that would be legalized here are 2 ounces, 10 grams of concentrate, 200 milligrams of THC products. We still have to be 21 plus to possess it. Both bills, this bill and the bill that was passed last year from the Senate, bans public smoking in public, and in both like vaporizing in any sort of way. And both bills ban don't allow for impaired driving, don't allow for people under 21 to use it. You can't transfer it to minors. All these sorts of common sense things that matter to the people who are concerned about the harm caused by increased consumption of cannabis. And so my goal here is to stop arresting people. It is 2025. This is something that has been legalized in nearly half the states in the country. And in New Hampshire, in the most recent data, which was from 2023, there were over 690 people who were arrested for cannabis possession in 2023. And so for me, that in this day and age where our culture has learned a lot more about cannabis, where many other states have legalized it, this is sort of an injustice that needs to be stopped. And that's my primary motivation for it. I personally, be on the record, while I have consumed cannabis in my life, I'm not a consumer. So in terms of actually me benefiting from this, I don't really care. I just care about people not being arrested. And that's what the goal of this is. So there's not really a lot of differences from our language and the language that was passed out of the Senate last year with respect to how we legalize it. And we just don't touch the complicated part, which is, do we want a state-run model, a franchise model, a free markets type system to sell things? All of those things can be addressed later. There's a precedent for this. Vermont did it exactly this way. They legalized it, and 4 years later, they came back and regulated how they're going to sell it. We're surrounded, we're like a little island, as we're all aware, of one state in New England that doesn't allow legalization, and even our friends to the north up in Quebec, it's legal there. And so it'd be pretty naive to think that people are not consuming cannabis in our state, and it's a tragedy that they're being arrested and potentially having their rights and their lives disrupted or ruined because of those arrests. So there's my motivation behind it. That's the summary of what the bill does, and happy to take any questions.
What a surprise. Senator Abbas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for taking my question. You testified that cannabis being illegal leads to injustices. Can you elaborate on that?
I'm sorry, say that again?
You said it's an injustice for people to be punished for violating cannabis laws. Can you explain what you mean by the injustice?
Yeah, so when anybody gets arrested and has a record, then it is something that follows them. It can make it hard to get jobs. It can make it hard for them to get, work for various companies, various, the federal government. Well, that would still be a problem because it's still illegal federally. But yeah, so I mean, just the problems that come with having a record. People don't want to hire you. You could be a felon. it's a financial impact on people as well. So, you know, it takes money out of their pocket when we fine them for something. And so that's the injustice. And the reason it's an injustice is, yes, they're breaking the law as the law is written in New Hampshire today. But I think that society has moved to a point where this isn't something that people are particularly concerned about. And the majority of people in this state want it legalized. Only 19% don't want it to remain illegal. And so given that, I think where society is, it's not a just act to continue to arrest people for this. So I want to try to change the law so that we don't have to continue doing that.
Thank you.
Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for taking my question. So I'm looking specifically at page 2 of the legislation. And I just would love for you to clarify that on line 11, it says possessing, except as provided in paragraph 3, if undertaken by a person 21 years of age or older, possessing, consuming, processing, or transporting that does not exceed the legal limit. And then we go down further to line 20, it says no person shall smoke or vape cannabis in a public place. So the intention of 11 is that you keep that in your private home, right?
Yeah, in private places. So you can't smoke publicly. That is a guardrail that's reasonable. I spoke with a lot of people who actually were really concerned about that specifically. One person raised the concern, and I don't know if this is valid or not, but I just tried to incorporate people's concerns when I was talking about this with people in both bodies. And one member told me that he was concerned about public smoking because secondhand smoke might cause somebody to fail a drug test. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think there's a lot of valid reasons beyond that why public smoking would be inappropriate. So that was the intention of that language.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, thank you for your test. Do we? No? Okay. We're all set. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Representative is Howard, there you are. Sure. We'll take a break after. Go red, white.
All right. Thank you, senators, for. Oh, okay.
Go ahead. We're ready.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, senators. For the record, my name is Representative Heath Howard. I represent the towns of Stratford and Barrington in Stratford District 4. And today I'm speaking in favor of HB 198 because, in my opinion, this is a piece of common sense legislation that only expands the personal individual liberties of Granite Staters. This is something that people have been doing for years at this point. All of our neighbors have legalized it, and it's something where, whether we like it or not, people are coming over the border from Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont with some of these substances that they've purchased legally. And it is something where we are really missing out on the opportunity to sell these the substance and actually make profit from it. However, this bill does not do that. What it does is it bans the sale, it bans public use, and instead focuses on, again, those individual liberties and make sure that people have the right to possess this substance and use it in their own private homes, or I should say private property in general as allowed by the property owner. And that is why I think that this is a fine idea, because we're not talking about allowing people to be driving on the roads with this, and being able to smoke in public and having to drive home. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people having the right to use the substance in mostly their own homes and being able to feel comfortable with the fact that they are not breaking the law. It's something, in my opinion, that shouldn't be a negative offense, but it is. And I think that it's something that is on us to reverse it. With that being said, I'm open to any questions.
Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. Johannan, we're not going to keep you for last. We'll move you up. Oh, okay. Karen O'Keefe. Good afternoon, Ms. O'Keefe.
Good afternoon. Thank you for hearing my testimony. I'm Karen O'Keefe. I'm the Director of State Policies. Oh, yeah, that would help. Good afternoon. I'm Karen O'Keefe, the Director of State Policies at the Marijuana Policy Project, which is a nonprofit that works to reform cannabis laws. I've had the pleasure working with activists across both sides of the political spectrum in New Hampshire for over 15 years on cannabis policy reform, and I'm here to urge you to pass this very modest bill that would treat adults like grown-ups and let them make their own decision about a substance that is safer than alcohol and many other decisions that people are free to make. In both this country and in New Hampshire, we value liberty, we value freedom, and within reason, we let adults make their own decision to do things that might have some risks. You're not banning big gulps, you're not banning being sedentary or playing football or rock climbing, and you're not banning alcohol either. In fact, the state itself sells alcohol. It is wrong to ban the safer substance than alcohol. It's an intrusion on liberty, and cannabis not only is much safer than alcohol for many people, it also is beneficial. A large percent of people that use cannabis as an over-the-counter medicine, not as registered patients, do so essentially as over-the-counter medicine. 61% say that they use cannabis to sleep. The lack of sleep can be very harmful for people. It's been linked to a decrease in longevity. It can cause diabetes. It can cause stroke, heart disease, and of course injury from being fatigued when you're driving or do other things. Other treatments such as Ambien can be very dangerous themselves. Ambien has a box warning that it can cause death from people sleep driving. So for many people, the prohibition on cannabis is injustice because for most people who want to use cannabis in New Hampshire are already doing so. 20% of people, adults, say they've used cannabis in the past year here. But the most law-abiding people, especially older people, don't want to be lawbreakers. They want to abide by the law. So they're not using a treatment as over-the-counter that could really improve their well-being. If New Hampshire had an initiative process, you would have legalized cannabis years ago. Poll after poll after poll shows the vast majority of your constituents want cannabis to be legal. Last year, 65% of voters said they support legalization. Only 19% were opposed. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of the public. And I believe that you should allow adults to make the decision. On the question of the injustice, in addition to preventing people from just exercising their liberty and making decisions that are safer than alcohol and many medications, the impacts of a criminal record can be devastating. And anybody that comes back to the state with more than 3/4 of an ounce of cannabis, amounts that are legal to purchase in neighboring states, can face a misdemeanor conviction and up to a year in jail. The effects of a misdemeanor conviction can be devastating. They don't pursue the entire career path that they intended to because the state of New Hampshire has 167 collateral consequences where you can be denied different occupational licenses and professional licenses, being a deaf and hard of hearing interpreter, a home inspector, a geologist, the list goes on and on and on and on. And in addition, there's the trauma of the actual arrest, the stress of a trial, even if you don't end up going to jail. I talked to a public defender here that said people have had their cars impounded for having a little over 300 milligrams of THC, which is the amount decriminalized. So I believe it's wrong to brand 19% of your constituents criminals for choosing to relax with cannabis, and so do the vast majority of Granite Staters. And I urge you to report HB 198 ought to pass, and I thank you so much for your time. Any questions? Thank you.
Anyone could be Alicia. We'll move on. Sue Hamala.
Hi, Sue Hamola, New Hampshire Chairman of Smart Purchase Marijuana. We oppose this bill. We provided extensive information before, so I won't go over that. I will say that all of the arguments that people use to legalize usually are not based in facts, and they're not based in the data to things. Marijuana is a federally legal Schedule I drug, and nothing has changed. I will say that regardless of our laws on the books right now, we actually do have an issue with people smoking marijuana in public, and that is a public nuisance. So if everything could get stripped away from this bill and there was increased penalties for smoking in public, that'd probably be really great for some folks here in New Hampshire. Any questions? I don't have anything else. Thank you.
But not to speak. I'm sorry. They're getting off the exit now, I understand. Law enforcement's not doing. Good afternoon, Chairman Gannon, members of the committee. My name is Elizabeth Sargent. I work for Champaign Capital Group, here for the New Hampshire Association of Chiefs of Police in opposition to House Bill 198. And I guess I'll just make a couple of statements. Marijuana continues to be a Schedule I drug, a problem for law enforcement is still there is no roadside test. And the one thing I heard today that was testified, there was a statistic given that in 2023, 690 people have been arrested. I would want to look at that. That could be the number of summons that was given after decrim. So I would like to confirm that. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Seeing no others, anyone there? Motion to go into executive session.
What's that? Motion, we go into executive session. Okay, I make an ITL motion on the preceding bill, 198. Do I have a second? Discussion?
Yeah, why? That was fast. Yeah, why?
Do you want to start?
Well, we had a similar bill last week that would have done,
Last year.
really, I think we had another
Okay.
one that would have allowed some type of possession limits. This is a little more extensive, but we ITL'd that one. And all I can hear people talk about is an injustice that I personally feel could have been resolved with prior legislation, but apparently that injustice. Well,
Yeah.
but this is gonna be just an open policy that just allows it to be everywhere. That's what it can do. There's no guardrails in any type of retail market, yet it's set up that way.
But this isn't sales. This is just
No,
personal possession.
No, I understand that,
Yeah.
but you're gonna have large amounts of possession of an illegal substance but without any place to legally buy it in the state. That's not something I support, but when you hear testimony about an injustice, that injustice could have been resolved, but apparently didn't outweigh the objection of how it's being sold. So I'm not persuaded by that argument at all. And this is not the way to go about it. I know Vermont did this. I don't think that was a great plan for Vermont, because that's putting the horse before the cart.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't seize on the word injustice. What I did hear that really rang a bell for me was it's a modest bill and that we're going to treat people like grown-ups. I think it is probably reality that there's a large number of adults who smoke marijuana now. They can get it from every state surrounding us and bring it home legally. They can get it and bring it home. I see the lack of legalizing small amounts of marijuana that cannot be smoked in public, part of the bill, not smoke it in public, and as just the reality of what's happening right now. And instead, we're tying up the courts, tying up law enforcement, tying up people's lives with trying to enforce these violations of small amounts. I'm not surprised that somebody's car was impounded. That is the reaction to people's feelings, law enforcement's feelings about marijuana. I do understand that there's not a roadside test for it right now, but I suspect that is an issue, whether it's legalized or not legalized. And I really do think treating adults like adults and letting them make that decision is the way to go.
I think in order to have your vehicle impounded, assuming it wasn't because they were impaired, there would have had to been a criminal offense, not a violation level offense. So I don't know all the facts and details of that, but I would imagine either they had far over the amount that would have been what is allowed to be decrimmed. I don't know the details, but they wouldn't just, if you had 3/4 of an ounce or less and that was it, that's not going to lead to your vehicle being impounded.
May I follow up?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Just to respond, I think oftentimes that may well be the case, and those facts are finally adjudicated when you get to a courtroom. And in fact, that means somebody has gone without their car for a long, long time while those facts are coming out. So probably, I don't know the facts of that case either. Sounds like it's minimal, but court proceedings do in fact really impact people's lives. And I think the courts should be reserved for things that are not somebody having less than 3/4 of an ounce of marijuana that they only use in their home. And buy legally in every state around us.
I'll just say a few words. I'll probably say a few more next week. But for me, it's always been about our youth. It's the wrong message to send kids. I've coached hundreds of kids. Really, and the reason I never used when I was young, it was illegal. Had it been legal, I probably would have used along with everyone else. But for me, I've somehow been a law and order guy, and it was a no for me because it was illegal. Poly-use driving is a huge problem. I was recently appointed to the Governor's Commission. I think it's called the Safety Task Force because we don't have any, people won't take the breathalyzer, but that's another issue. But what came up in there is we don't have a roadside test. Everyone knows now, a lot of people know to have 3 drinks and then you switch over and you start using marijuana because then you're using poly-use. Almost half of our fatalities are now poly-use of drugs. People are using marijuana with them. And until we have a test of some sort, we're having this, you have 3 drinks and you switch over, or you do it the other way. So now you're impaired to a much higher degree. But again, I'll go back to, so that's a problem, a large problem on our roads. But it's, for me, it's the youth. The youth see, and I've been to the Raymond Coalition, I've listened to them. They don't do drugs. Part of the reason is it's a no, they know it's a problem. It's not going to help anyone. We have so many problems with our youth right now, from education, problems that came up in COVID. They're not performing well. They're having psychological problems. This is just one more burden that we're going to place on them. When they see adults doing it, it's going to send the green light that it's okay. Mom and dad are doing it out publicly. It's okay for me. It's not a big deal any more than a beer is. I'm not saying the beer is good. I'm just saying this is introducing another evil. So I am supporting the ITL motion. You can go ahead, though, Senator, first.
Thank you, Senator. So I hear what you're saying, but we have to be focused on the bill in front of us, which very specifically says you cannot smoke or vape marijuana in public places, period. So that actually still, and you also, so that still constitutes an offense. And then additionally, similar to alcohol, you can't have it before you're 21 years of age. So if the argument is that it's terrible modeling for children, then perhaps are you suggesting that we shouldn't also have alcohol in front of children because there are significant risks with the consumption of alcohol? And I don't think that's the case because the state of New Hampshire sells the alcohol. And we sell it on the highway. So this is not looking to sell marijuana. It is just letting grown-ups who are over the age of 21 make choices about whether they want to consume or not and be free from this petty prosecution for these very small amounts. So I'm going to support this bill.
What I will tell you this is, if this became law, I know there's a hope that the people who are using cannabis in the state are either a patient under the ATC program or buying it at least from a store in one of our surrounding states. But this would apply if you bought it off the street corner. So you can buy 2 ounces off someone off the street, and you can possess that, and it's legal. It's not tested. Who knows what's in there? And that market will allow, there's a black market issue either way, even with a legitimate recreational policy. But this, without all the testing and all those other safeguards that go into it, I think this is not the way to go. And, I would support any type of recreational model with legitimate sales over this. I know I've been on record being pretty strict with what I would support, but this, without any of that, this is literally, you can buy it off the corner. And that's this is a legitimate concern, that market will flourish more than it would with a legitimate policy. And I think we got to be aware of that. So I don't believe this is the way to go about it.
Okay, I move the question. All in favor of the ITL motion? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We'll take it out.
Senator Abbas will take it up. Motion to end the executive session.
So
Second. All in favor? Aye. So can you get me the list for the next bill?
He was just using the time.
Okay. Okay.
You here? There he is. Representative Verbal. Come on down, sir. The Judiciary is back in session. We are doing HB 528, an act amending penalties for the possession and use, I'll never say the word right, to me it's mushrooms, but for persons 18 and older. How do you say the word?
Psilocybin.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. For the record, I am Representative Kevin Verville, Rockingham 2, representing the communities of Auburn, Candia, and Deerfield. This is a long story. And so last year, I filed a bill to legalize 3 psychedelic substances. Psilocybin that we have before us today, mescaline found in peyote cacti in desert southwest of the United States, and LSD, which is a synthetic psychedelic. And that was clearly a bridge too far for the House Criminal Justice Committee, and that's fine. It got some support, but not enough. So this year I came back with a more limited bill, which was not the bill before you, but it was a legalization of psilocybin in New Hampshire. And that was a bridge too far for the Criminal Justice Committee. And so the bill was entirely replaced by the bill that you have in front of you, which I believe is lovingly referred to decriminalization, although I don't agree with that term because it still makes it a crime to possess or use psilocybin. But one of the challenges that we have is in the mid-1960s, there was social upheaval and the introduction of new substances to society. And a lot of those substances all got swept up into one big bundle and made Schedule I by the feds, and they have remained there ever since. It's important to know that psychedelic substances were used medically through the late 1940s, throughout the entire 1950s, and into the 1960s until the feds slammed the door shut. There has been limited research allowed the last several decades. My pinch point is making somebody a felon for a first-time offense of psilocybin. When you make a person a felon, you put them into a special class of people. And that is a burden, albeit self-created, that they will carry for the rest of their lives. So working with the Criminal Justice Committee, we came up with something that was found to be acceptable, not just to a majority, but unanimously to the committee. We've all heard of 3 strikes, you're out. This is a 4 strikes, you're out. So the first offense is a violation. Second offense, Class B misdemeanor, up to $500, no jail. Third offense, Class B misdemeanor, up to $1,000, no jail. Fourth offense and subsequent is a felony. Make no mistake about it. I am not a general legalization of drugs person. There are a lot of highly addictive, dangerous, and deadly drugs that are on the black market. And they need to be regulated. And among those are amphetamines, barbiturates, narcotics, and opioids. The substance before us is none of those. Those substances are all highly addictive because of the way they operate in the brain, and they flood dopamine receptors. And dopamine is the pleasure trigger in the brain. And by flooding dopamine, you end up building addiction, chronic addiction. And the other challenge with those drugs is as you become tolerant, if you take a larger dose, you will get the high. And then eventually you will hit a dose which will kill you. Psychedelics in general, and psilocybin specifically, works on serotonin receptors in the brain, not dopamine. And that's one of the huge things that sets it apart from these other substances. For that reason, this is non-addictive, non-habit forming. If you consume psilocybin, and the next day you decide to consume psilocybin again, you will not get the high. And you can increase the dose, and you will not get the high, because serotonin receptors in the brain need time to go back to stasis, and you will not get the effect. If you continually flood serotonin receptors, they simply ignore the message coming in. So it's almost like the password on an Apple device, right? If you type in the wrong password, the more times you try to do that, the longer it makes you wait to try it again. So these are not habit forming, these are not addictive drugs. In fact, biologically, they have a built-in timeout. All I'm trying to do is get to some common sense reform for this is multiple offense, but certainly we want to get away from first offense being a felony. We heard a lot of things in the executive session that apply to bills you heard earlier today, and one could argue they apply to this bill. So Schedule 1, psilocybin Schedule 1, yes, absolutely. But that's a safety mechanism, isn't it? Right? The reason that's a safety mechanism is if we pass this bill and all of a sudden we are inundated with psilocybin mushrooms, the feds will act. Virtually every large psilocybin bust in the US has been coordinated by federal drug enforcement authorities. And so because it's still Schedule 1, it doesn't matter what the state law says, the feds can come in and act. The bill is a little unique in that it's age 18, and I know a lot of times we like age 21. But the fact of the matter is, citizens hit the age of majority at the age of 18. At the age of 18, you are an adult. My wife and I brought one of our daughters to New York a couple of weeks ago. The other daughter stayed home, and they're 18. And I said, honey, you realize you're 18 years old now, and we're leaving you home alone. And so if something were to happen, you are the responsible adult, and there is very little that mom and dad can do. Praise be to God. She said, absolutely, Dad, totally get it. You have nothing to worry about. So I said, thank you. And that's why this bill is at 18, because I believe the age of majority is the age of majority. Typically, people on psychedelic experiences are not driving around because it is a rather moving experience. And for that reason, they do not tend to get behind the wheel of a car or any vehicle or heavy equipment. But it's funny, we talk about that there's no reliable test for cannabis, and that would be true, in full disclosure, that's true for psilocybin too. But that's not really what you mean, right? We're not using our words carefully. There is a reliable test for intoxication, and it is a roadside sobriety test. And if you fail a roadside sobriety test, you can be arrested for driving under the influence. When we talk about the test, when we talk about the breathalyzer test for alcohol or a blood alcohol test, and we don't have that for cannabis and other substances, that is true. But then what you're talking about is prima facie evidence, right? That we don't have an easy mechanism to prima facie evidence. And for me, to use that as a reason to not pass common sense reform legislation, for me, that doesn't add up. So the original bill was replaced. It was replaced with the bill that's in front of you. Technically, it's a 4 strikes and you're out. It prevents making otherwise legal, law-abiding citizens being first-time use felons, and that really is the goal of the legislation. And for that reason, oh, the other thing I should add, if you go on the internet and you look up drug safety stats, particularly as measured by arrest, conviction, and hospitalization really is a key one. Psilocybin is actually rated as safer than cannabis, and cannabis is rated safer than alcohol. And so and one last thing. It is virtually impossible to overdose on psilocybin. The lethal dose that you would have to ingest is like 20 pounds of mushrooms in a sitting. And I would challenge anybody, well, I wouldn't challenge anybody, don't do that, it's crazy, but it's virtually impossible. So to have a lethal dose of psilocybin is all but impossible. And so I would recommend that the committee follow the House Criminal Justice Committee and the House. The House passed this bill on the consent calendar by a voice vote. And so I would ask that the Senate concur with the House, move this OTP, and get this common sense change enacted. Thank you.
Just a couple of quick questions. It's something I'm not that familiar with. Are there convictions every year for use of, is it psilocybin?
Psilocybin.
Psilocybin.
So that's an excellent question.
You also, with it, you had said the feds go after it if there's large amounts. Does the state ever do anything? Are we arresting one person a year? Or?
So it's an excellent question. So last year, the lieutenant from the state police who's in charge of drugs, narcotics, I forget his exact title, but he's the guy that's in charge of all that. He was asked by the Criminal Justice Committee, do you have psychedelics arrests? And he said he couldn't remember the last one, if any. He did go on to testify that, the materials are here in New Hampshire and being consumed by citizens. The last one I remember was a food mushroom grower up in the North Country, in or around Woodstock, who was growing gourmet mushrooms for gourmet restaurants, apparently was running another business out of the back half, and that in fact was researched and busted by the feds. That was a much larger operation. So no, to the best of my knowledge, this really isn't a problem, right? The challenge is if you choose to do this and you're unlucky enough to get caught, you're automatically in a felon category. And in my mind, for these substances, that simply is not right or fair.
Where do people find these mushrooms? Is there a little group around the state that all Google?
So that is another fantastic question. So psilocybin mushrooms are found on 6 of 7 continents. Antarctica is the only continent where psilocybin mushrooms have not been found. Psilocybin mushrooms grow naturally in New Hampshire. In fact, they grow naturally in all 50 states. And so if you are a mushroom forager, cow patties and marginal areas, for whatever reason, they like marginal soil, those are the places to find them. Psilocybin mushrooms have been around for forever. Thousands of years they've been used around the world. In the 60s, the preference seemed to be LSD for various reasons. The feds have done a very good job at controlling precursors so LSD has to be synthesized, right? It has to be man-made. And so the feds have done an excellent job controlling precursors, and so it's very very difficult to make that. In the decades, there has been a migration from LSD use to psilocybin use in that segment of our society that chooses to try these substances. So you can make this as illegal as you want, but if you're a good mushroom hunter, you can go find them for free in New Hampshire.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
No problem. Heath Howard. Is he still outside or? Beth, want to take a quick look? Let's see if he's there. Nope. Okay, thank you. Major Bright, you still here in the back? There you are. Thank you. More, okay.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Bill Bright. I'm a major with the New Hampshire State Police. We're here in opposition of House Bill 528. Psilocybin is a Schedule I drug. It's a psychedelic. The highs that people get from psychedelics and psilocybin are unpredictable, which we believe would be extremely dangerous to decriminalize, as is the case with this bill, and send the message that we're moving that direction in the state of New Hampshire. Obviously, with an unpredictable result of using psilocybin, the impaired driving will be an issue, increased use by youth, and who knows what else could be involved with that type of situation. The claim that this is used for medical purposes, this is not approved by the FDA or any other approved medical board that I'm aware of. People that are using this for medical purposes or to treat any type of disease or condition, they're not under the care of a doctor in this case. So I don't believe that that's a valid argument. We believe that this is a dangerous drug due to the nature of its effect on the people who use it and how that could affect other people that they come in contact with. It alters reality. It has lots of potential issues for the use of a psychedelic for any reason.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Bright.
Can I say one more thing?
You sure can.
I think when Representative Verville made mention of the state police lieutenant, he was referring to me as far as when because I did testify that I was not aware of the last arrest. That does not mean that those arrests had not happened by the state police or by other officers in the state of New Hampshire. I think to get accurate statistics, we would need to get those from the state crime lab. The reason that I was not aware is because I haven't been on patrol since 2011. So I do oversee the drug unit, but the only time that I would necessarily be made aware of this is if it became an issue that I needed to address at the administrative level that I'm at.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sue Hamala.
Hi, I'm Sue Hamola, New Hampshire Chairman of Smart Purchase Marijuana. As mentioned before, this is psilocybin is a federally legal psychedelic Schedule I controlled substance. Current penalties are the first offense, Class B felony, not more than $25,000, as we've discussed already. If the pretext to HB 528 would reduce that down to a violation and not more than $100 of a fine. This is a laughably low bar to go from the current penalties down to $100 in a violation. And it's really the first step. When we see what's the game plan that people use to get public acceptance of a drug and then ultimate legalization, the first step is to lower the penalties and have a version of decriminalization. So we see that with this bill, and it's also another attempt to allow citizens to self-medicate using a federally illegal drug while absent any medical supervision or clear scientific documentation on the risks. The medical application of psilocybin and other psychedelics is ongoing, but even the American Psychological Association concedes that more study is needed to understand the risks of this. And much like marijuana, the push for psilocybin is happening in some states. It's another sort of a cart before the horse approach to this drug. In the 1950s, the US government actually experimented with psychedelics using service members as a way to study psychological warfare. Later studies found many of these military personnel suffered lasting psychiatric symptoms, and that whole experiment was considered a serious breach of ethics. And this is what led to psychedelics being put on the controlled substances list, Schedule 1. It is irresponsible for any state legislature to lower the bar on citizen experimentation with psilocybin or penalties for possession without having clear understanding of the risks involved. Of note, the voters in Massachusetts, which is considered a pretty drug-friendly state, the voters in Massachusetts actually said no to psilocybin legalization, and I think that's pretty noteworthy because it kind of shows you that even those citizens who are pretty drug-friendly are taking a cautious approach after they've seen what happens when legalized drugs are prolific in their communities. And as Rep. Verville had said, that this came out of the House Criminal Justice Committee with unanimous vote and was passed in the House in a consent calendar. This legislative session, we've seen actually quite a bit of interesting things. We've seen a very apathetic approach the House has taken to drug-related bills. We have a lot of, I would say, pro-legalization or pro-substance use drugs, not drugs, but reps who are seeing how far they can push that game ball as much as possible. And then you have other reps who are more public health centered, and they're being quite apathetic and not raising a finger because they're using you all as the backstop. And to be honest with you, this tactic is also being employed with regard to the state budget as a controversial bill coming up to allow the state therapeutic dispensaries to be for profit. That's embedded into a House version of the budget. I just want to say for the record that as a former state rep, I find the House's lack of robust evaluation of high impact public health bills appalling. And I consider it to be a form of legislative malpractice that they're just dumping it on your lap to take care of. Any questions? Thank you.
I don't think so. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify on 520? I'm sorry. Oh, Dr. Hannon, I'm sorry. Maybe I got other pages I didn't see here. Hold on. I was getting carried away. I think I have an extra page. I apologize.
No, quite all right. Thank you very much. So a lot of what I was going to say was already said, so I'll just talk about a couple of the little reasons why. This is not just a recreational thing that needs to be done. We heard discussions about how it's a Schedule I drug. Schedule I drugs have to meet, basically, what makes a Schedule I drug is it's a drug with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Neither of those are true for psychedelic drugs. They're not physically addictive. There's even a lot of evidence to show they're not even psychologically addictive. People are not, they don't have an urgent need to do them other than wanting to. As far as safety, there was a study that looked at, and I will send you all these studies. I have them all here. I'll send at least links to them about the adverse effects of people going to the emergency room for psychedelic use, specifically psilocybin. They looked at I think it was over 9,000. I don't have the exact number, but it was over 9,000 people they looked at in the course of a year. And there were just a very small number of people that showed up to the emergency room for treatment. There were, how was it? We're talking double digits of people actually showed up out of 9,000 plus people who used it in the past year. All but one of those patients were released within 24 hours with no effects whatsoever. The most common things were psychological effects. Physical effects were pretty much non-existent. The number one indicator for people to go to the emergency room was younger age. So usually children or young adults are more likely to go to the emergency room. Older people, I don't know, maybe we just know that it'll pass. But they also, like I said, it's very safe. There are only 3 physically safe. There are only 3 known deaths that were attributed to psilocybin use, and they estimated that the amount necessary to cause a lethal dose is around 10 kilograms. That's over 22 pounds of mushrooms. I dare anyone to eat 1 kilogram of regular mushrooms and not be sick. It's something that's very unlikely to happen. You do see it with, you could see it with farm animals or someone who's just trying to eat a whole bunch for some silly reason. But it's extremely safe. The safety profile is far lower than alcohol. And some of the reasons that it was also clinically used, it's been used for. We heard psychedelic research was used in the 50s and 60s by the government. They were mind control experiments, and I'm sure it was not just giving the person the drug and seeing how they affected them. They were trying to change people's behavior. There were some very inhumane treatments that were done. It was a horrible part of our history, and to use that as justification for banning something, it was just preposterous. There was one of the two founders of Alcoholics Anonymous, Bill Wilson, was a known proponent of using LSD. It was something that gave him what is known in most 12-step circles as a spiritual awakening. And I'm not saying that people in 12 steps all do this. Most, actually, I'm sure the organization doesn't have a position because they don't have positions to outside people. But it was extensively used and researched before it was made illegal at the federal level by Bill Wilson and other researchers into treating substance use and keeping people in sobriety. There are several studies that talk about it's been used as a substantial and to produce substantial and sustained decreases in depression and anxiety in patients with life-threatening cancer. That was Journal of Psychopharmacology, randomized double-blind trial from 2016. Also, the effects of psilocybin-assisted therapy on major depressive disorder in 2021 in JAMA Psychiatry. They showed it had an incredibly effective ability to treat depression and specifically drug-resistant treatment to PTSD and other severe depression and anxiety. Okay. I think that it's clearly there's a use for it in the recovery field for people who choose to. It's not saying it's a panacea, and I'm not encouraging people to go do it. Just by doing it doesn't mean you're not going to drink or do other drugs, but it is a definite tool to use in some treatment programs. MAPS is one program. There are also psychedelics and recovery organizations out there. And I think it's short-sighted to keep the penalty, even if no one's being prosecuted for it, even if there wasn't one arrest, that hangs over people's heads. So if someone has to decide, I'm going to do this or try to do it to maybe help with my sobriety that I haven't been able to get under control for whatever, how long a period of time, or I have major PTSD and depression that is resistant to treatment, and I've tried for years, why can't someone use this without fear of committing a felony? And this bill has all the protections for youth and still has penalties involved. I think it's an easy step to take, and I beg you to please pass this simple, easy step to make lives better for people. Thank you very much. Be happy to take questions or go home, whatever you like.
Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Hannon.
Thank you.
And I do have somebody on the next page, Matthew Norilla. No, so. Oh, no, okay, I can see that. That's the blue suit my wife wants me to have, but you're a little thinner, so I think I might have some problems with it.
Yeah, Chairman Gannon and member of the committee. My name is Matthew Sullivan.
Oh, yep.
Thank you. Good now. My name is Matthew Nosella, and I'm a detective with the Manchester, New Hampshire Police Department, and I've been there for just under 10 years. I'm currently in the Special Enforcement Division, which is basically our drug unit. I'm here to testify in opposition to House Bill 528 on behalf of the New Hampshire Associations of Chiefs of Police. First, I believe we need to consider the effects of psilocybin on individuals who are already struggling with mental health issues. With the effects of taking psilocybin being hard to predict and varying from person to person, adding in the mental health component most certainly can trigger a dangerous psychological episode. Hallucinations are known to have unpredictable effects on the brain, as I've experienced this in the field. And in people with existing mental health challenges, these substances could worsen their conditions or even lead to long-term harm. There's currently no framework into place
to ensure that these vulnerable individuals are protected from the potential dangers of such drugs. Without implementing clear safeguards of psilocybin consumption for at-risk populations, the result would be increasingly dangerous. Moreover, House Bill 528 does not provide any guidelines or standards for the safe use of psilocybin. There are no established safe dosages, no regulations for how it should be consumed, and no protocols ensuring the purity of the substance. Another large risk of legalizing psilocybin is the potential for tainted substances to flood the market. Without any regulation, there is nothing stopping contaminated or counterfeit products from being sold as legal psilocybin, putting consumers at even a greater risk. Another significant concern is the absence of limits on the amount of psilocybin a person can legally possess. House Bill 528 makes no distinction between personal use amounts and larger quantities that could be suggestive of trafficking and distribution. This lack of regulation makes it easy for illicit drug trade to continue under the disguise of being legal. It complicates law enforcement efforts and creates a loophole that would only serve to benefit those engaged in the illegal sale of narcotics. Finally, we must remember that psilocybin remains a Schedule I controlled substance under federal law. In conclusion, I urge the committee to carefully consider the consequences of legalizing psilocybin. The risks far outweigh any potential benefits, especially when you have no safeguards in place to protect vulnerable individuals and our communities. For those reasons, I respectfully ask you to find House Bill 528 inexpedient to legislate.
Thank you very much, Detective. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Does anyone else wish to testify on 528? Seeing none, that'll end the hearing. Questions, please. Just off the record. It's almost 4. Do you want to take 10 minutes and then executive view? Or do you just want to do a big day on Tuesday? Lots of
I'm fine with doing them now.
Okay. Can we have 5 minutes?
Yep.
So we're going to take a 5-minute break and we're going to exec. Thank you. We're going to take a 5-minute break and then do a little executive. Thank you. It is a long and winding road. I thought you were gonna go into song there, long and winding road.
Oh, no.
No, okay. Okay. All set? Thank you. Motion to go into executive session. Thank you. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We'll start with 109. I'm going to make a re-refer motion. It's relative to false reports to law enforcement. We thought there was concerns. We want you to go forward, but we're concerned it'll discourage going to the police reporting because then you could get in trouble. We thought it would discourage people from going forward. Other thoughts? You okay with the re-refer motion?
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Sure.
I second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to re-refer, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Move consent.
All in favor of the consent?
Oops.
Seconded. All in favor of the consent motion? Aye.
Aye.
I'll take it up. Okay, we're moving to 190 relative to therapeutic cannabis possession limits. I have an ITL motion.
Second.
I'm sorry, what number are you going to?
I'm sorry.
190.
190.
190, okay,
Yep.
109 to 190.
I believe it was 2 ounces to 4.
Yes.
Discussion?
Yeah, I think we heard testimony, and I believe it to be true that it's a trend nowadays to not get your medicine in 30-day supplies, to get 90-day supplies. And for a product that folks are getting in very limited locations in the state of New Hampshire, it seems to make total sense to me that they could access more on each trip. I think it's really just a convenience thing.
Then Travis, your thoughts?
Well, we heard some suggestion that it may be cheaper to do it this way. I don't think we have enough information to really determine that, but I would maybe reconsider it if I was persuaded by that, but I don't think it's going to make it cheaper. I don't know if you buy in bulk, you get a discount. I also wasn't clear how many patients actually go, when they go to the therapeutic facility, actually buy the 2 ounce maximum. You know, if people are going there and that's customarily what they buy, and all we heard is how expensive it is. So I'm not clear that's happening. I know there's a lot of different products there, but I don't think raising it to 4 ounces, at least what I heard, was enough to persuade me to increase that.
Okay. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think what I heard when, during the testimony, was that, we have very few places where there are 10 ATCs, and not everybody lives close to one. And if you are 90 minutes away, you've got a 3-hour trip, not including what you are, how long you're spending at the ATC, which means you got to go during business hours. It's very inconvenient. And the whole reason you're going is because you have jumped through all the hoops to get to get access to this. And I really think that we make people spend money on gas. We make people take time off. We make them pay caregivers to go do it. It's really, really hard to get access to therapeutic cannabis. We don't make it easy. It's easier to get, it's easier to get Ambien, and you can get 90-day supply of that than it is to get therapeutic cannabis. And, why can't we just make it easy for people to get what is a legal product here in the state? It's just, I have to agree with the Honorable Dr. Joe Hannon that, we should be expanding options for people to get the medical cannabis that they have been prescribed and is legal. So,
Thank you, Senator.
trust
Okay.
patients.
On the ITL motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Take it under me.
I can take it up.
Okay. You do that, Senator Abbas will take it. Okay, 207, which was repealing the prohibition on possession of sale of blackjacks, slingshots, metallic knuckles, except by or to minors. I have an ITL motion. Does anyone down the other end of the room second my ITL motion?
Second.
We don't have to have any discussion unless someone wants to discuss it. Seeing none, all in favor of the ITL motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Which would be 3-2. I'll take it out. What the heck?
Be prepared. Sure, you want to do that, Senator?
207.
Well, I don't think, unless one of you two wants to take that out. Do you want to take that out?
All you.
You do?
I think
Oh, I thought you'd think it was good for me. Thank you.
Good speech.
Okay, we're moving on to 218, relative to providing victims of crime with a free police report of the investigation. I make a motion about to pass. Second from Senator Abbas. Discussion? Simple enough?
Oh.
Nope, okay,
Yes.
maybe not so simple.
No, we had in testimony, the prime sponsor, Representative McDonald, introduced it and asked for a continuance because there's a forthcoming amendment. And then we also heard from Pamela Keilig from the New Hampshire Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence that they are working with the stakeholders on an amendment. Do you have an amendment? I don't have one
I
yet.
don't, and I know Attorney Enders was gonna get me one, he never
Yeah.
did.
Can we hold this?
Sure,
And just ask
I'll
them if
withdraw my
they,
motion.
if they're not working on anything, then okay, fine.
Yeah.
They did say,
We're meeting
Is that
Thursday.
yeah,
We can either do it Thursday or Tuesday, either one.
yeah. Well, I mean, let's reach out to the prime
Sure.
sponsor if they were working on an amendment to
Yep.
give them
We
a
will
moment.
find that out. Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion and
move
somebody
that over
withdraws
here.
their second. Do I have to go further? Do I have to vote on it? No.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so that was 18. Okay, HB 226, relative to the use of drug checking equipment. I make a motion to ITL. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I meant to recognize you.
Yeah, thank you. Why?
Senator Alves, do you want to start that?
Sure. So I think we sometimes say, although well-intended. I know when we had a similar bill last year, we amended it to really just be the testing strips. And I think the testimony, it's really hard to disagree with the testimony heard. I'm both in support and in opposition. But I think this has some drafting issues that I have concerns with. I mean, if you go to page 2, line 34, for example, this is what shall not be included as drug paraphernalia. Drug checking equipment used, purchased, transported, or distributed by agents of organizations that provide harm reduction services. In its application of that, what would happen is, as long as it was distributed by the organization that provides the harm reduction services, you can just use a fictional character who's running a large drug lab or whatever. They technically could use that equipment for what they're doing. I know it does say it can be used as, there's some exception to that and if it's part of other evidence. But I'm just saying that in and of itself would be allowed. under this. I also think it's not limited to just the harm reduction facility using the testing materials to find out how much fentanyl is in there. I know from the prior bills we had involving, when we wanted to have a mandatory sentence for certain fentanyl offenses, we heard a lot of mixed testimony about, well, people build up a tolerance. So I think just knowing how much fentanyl is in there is not necessarily going to safeguard someone from overdosing. Last year, last term, a big thing that we wrestled on when we made the testing strips was you had some testimony about people who take stuff they shouldn't be taking, but they're not intending on taking fentanyl, and they don't know this fentanyl in what they're taking. And the testing strip would at least let them know there is fentanyl in whatever they're taking. So we felt comfortable doing that. This, it would need to be, when I say blown up and rewritten, I mean, we would have to somewhat start from scratch, because this applies to anyone who has the materials. Now understand, someone using these devices to see how much fentanyl is in there, that also allows someone who's illegally dealing drugs to know if they want to cut their product and make it less potent, but expand what they have. And that's another unintended consequence of this. This doesn't really, although that's still illegal, this helps facilitate that. And when those devices are not something that's going to amount to probable cause. Right now, if you saw someone with that device, it would be a suggestion that they're committing a criminal activity. So I don't think this is limited to what the testimony is. That's why I believe an ITL is appropriate.
Again.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you. So when you started off, Senator Abbas, when you started off your description of the equipment's used, purchased, transported, or distributed by agents of organizations that provide harm reduction services, the end of that sentence is authorized by a state, county, municipal, or public health department. So these are harm reduction people that are known to the state, are authorized to be doing that. And I'm going to ascribe good motives to those people. I don't think those people are going to be distributing that equipment to a fentanyl dealer. And I would dare say, if they are, that there's 100 other reasons to arrest that fentanyl dealer other than him having this piece of equipment right here. Hopefully that plays out. But what I do think is that the amount of fentanyl, and I have personal experience with people have died because what they thought was one drug was fentanyl instead. And it was almost pure fentanyl that the person died from. So I think the possibility of saving one life, saving one mother, the tragedy of what they have gone through with losing their child, means the more that this testing equipment is out there and used and available for people to use is by far a better thing than the possible harm that somehow a person who's authorized to have that equipment, it's going to get into the hands of a dealer or something of that
Cinder,
sort.
wouldn't a fentanyl strip of just that simple thing, wouldn't that have saved the person's life, or could have?
So
They didn't know it was there.
possibly that does. We've heard testimony about the tolerance level of fentanyl.
Sure.
I mean, in prior hearings
Yep.
that we've had here. But the fact that a pill, as my colleague said a minute ago, that we thought maybe was Adderall is pure fentanyl instead, I think is not only notice for the harm reduction people to give to that person that's being tested, but maybe notice to law enforcement that there's pills that look like Adderall out there that are pure fentanyl instead, you know, for their own safety and doing their job. So to draw the line at the possibility of a dealer having this and using it for nefarious purposes, I think undermines a lot of people doing really, really hard work and great technology that's available here to actually make the determination about how dangerous something is.
So what I would say is, and one of my reads of this was for something, I'm not sure if this was the intention as well. They do strike the language for the testing strips. So I think keeping the testing strips I know that's, it's said in other parts here,
Absolutely.
But-
And it's within
but-
the same section. It's still
but
within
what you want to do,
318B1,
I think
Roman 10.
when we passed that policy, literally, it was last term. So we didn't even have the data available yet on how effective that's working. Literally, we were trying to, for the people who are taking fentanyl who don't want to take it, it's that their drugs are being spiked with something else. This would have let them know there is fentanyl in this. And now they know what they're taking has fentanyl in it. I think going this far with it, and there's some language, I mean, the nominal language needs to be addressed. And then if you go to the last page on page 4, there was the no persons part. I'm just saying the bill, this needs, if you're gonna do this, it needs to be reset and really cleaned up. And I'm just saying, that given the amount of legislation we have, but this draft we had last year did not make it out of this committee. And I didn't hear anything that would change my mind. We basically heard the same testimony as last, not the same, but
Well,
similar testimony.
I'm new here,
Yeah.
so I didn't hear that last.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is but we did amend that bill to the test strips, is the point I'm making. So we did put something out there. Well, and I'm more comfortable seeing how that's working when I think they said the data's not available yet. I'm not sure, I think it was represented to us 75 to 100% of addicts are using test strips. I would be surprised if it was 100%, but at the same time, I think the overdose, I would like to see how that's working.
So that language is preserved, and I think that's data that you probably can get next year, because within the same piece of statute where it's crossed out in one part of the section, it's right there beyond it. But why not get even more data to find out what happens when not only fentanyl, but all of the other things, the new technology that lists all of the other things that possibly could be in the drug, whether it's something harmful or it's an over-the-counter Benadryl that you could track also, that for some reason that's showing up there. And let me just address the nominal amount. You're a lawyer, nominal amount. Nominal amount is defined by the circumstances of where you are. And when you go to court, there's a trier of fact that's going to decide nominal amount. I think that's a common sense term at this point, where we can all say, if somebody comes in with a mud bale bucket full of something, that's obviously a nominal amount. If a roommate comes in with a pill from a collection of something that their roommate has, then that probably is a nominal amount. But I hate to get the technicalities of what this could be used for in the way of the good that I can really see it doing.
But the problem is, it's not just fentanyl, there's several other things listed.
Xylene,
So when you say
right.
a nominal amount, I think what happens is when you do this testing, there can occasionally be some trace amounts left behind.
Mhm.
So it would be helpful to know how much that is. I think that was just the point that the law enforcement brought up, is that without knowing specifically that amount,
I think knowledge is good.
I'm not sure how they're gonna proceed with that. If there's a nominal amount left over, I mean, any testing tube would have that. But I'm just saying, this as it's written though, doesn't have the safeguards that I'm concerned about. I think the points you raised are valid, but it can be misused. And it's with that possibility, you're talking about saving lives. This could save some lives, but it could also cost more if people are gonna be allowed to use this to facilitate the illegal drug trade as well. So I think what we would want to do is, if anything, this needs to start from scratch. If you want to work on the bill during the year 2, we'll talk. So I think there's something that I would be comfortable with, but this as written, I'm just saying there's too many pitfalls in here.
If you're offering re-referral, I would be happy to work on it.
I think we should start new. I wouldn't want to see this in a committee. I think it would be difficult to iron through it.
Okay, we have an ITL motion on the table. All those in favor of the ITL, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Very good. Do you want to take it up?
Sure.
I'm burying it today. I won't next day. Okay, Senator Apps will take note. Motion to go out of exec.
196?
So move second. 196?
I
I have that
wasn't,
on my list.
I'm done today.
Okay.
We're good. I'm tired now, old man. So motion to go out of exec,
So moved.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all. Now I gotta catch up pre-DNA. Missed the whole thing.